Tonight, this Portland area teen hit the high notes on American Idol. And now we're getting an inside look at how she's getting a little help from home in her quest to win over the judges.
You've heard of a chop shop for cars. Well, police think they found one for bikes.
I'm pretty impressed that I got my bike back.
The online detective work that finally led local police to a parts-filled hotel room.
She was just a teenager when her sister was brutally murdered.
The whole time I've always thought it was him.
Now, more than 30 years later, how investigators finally put a man behind bars.
But first, a little girl just learning to read and just starting to make friends. It was a simple walk home from a friend's house that turned to tragedy. Breaking news is first on Fox.
Live from Fox 12 Oregon, this is Breaking News.
Good evening. We do begin with some breaking news. A little girl has died after a terrible accident in southeast Portland.
She was walking home with a friend's 13-year-old uncle tonight. He says that he was holding her hand just like his mom asked him to do. But right near the intersection of Southeast 136th Avenue and Ellis, Portland police say the little girl broke free, ran ahead of him, and was hit by a car. KBTV's Caitlin Bolduc joins us live now from the area.
Well, Portland police say so far, by all accounts, this appears to be a horrific and tragic accident. They say no drugs or alcohol was involved. Speed was not a factor. And the 13-year-old boy who was walking the 4-year-old victim home appears to have done everything right. Now, Zach Peterson says he was walking the little girl home after a play date with his niece. The three only had to walk about a block and a half down 136th, and the three are walking hand in hand down the shoulder of the road. He says when they got close enough to see the victim's house, they were waiting to cross the street, and that's when the victim pulled away from him. Zach's mom gave us permission to talk to him about the moments before she was hit, and this is what he says happened.
We were walking to the house, and one car on the right-hand side stopped, so she pulled her hand out of my hand and ran across the street. But the car on the left-hand side was speeding that way, and she ran in front of me and hit her, and she flew, and I couldn't tell if she hit the mailbox or not. So I picked her up after I dropped all my stuff and ran over to the house that we were going to and set her on the porch and started banging on the door. And when I set her down, I realized she was bleeding a lot.
The victim's family immediately called for help, and the little girl was rushed to the hospital moments later, but unfortunately, police say she died along the way. We're told the driver of the car that hit the victim is a 69-year-old woman. She's cooperating with the investigation at this time, and police say so far there are no charges brought against her. Reporting live, Caitlin Bolduc, the 10 o'clock news.
Oh, Caitlin, what a heartbreaking story. As investigators sort out the details of this crash, we will continue to bring you updates right here on the 10 o'clock news and at kptv.com.
Detectives say DNA evidence helped them catch a killer 30 years after the murder of an Aloha teenager. Kenneth Lee Hicks is accused of murdering 17-year-old Lori Billingsley back in October of 1982. The case went cold and remained unsolved until now. KPTV's Kai Porter is live to explain how investigators cracked the case after all these years. Kai?
Well, Shauna, 30 years ago, DNA testing on a crime like this was pretty much impossible. But as technology improved over the years, investigators tried multiple times to use DNA to solve the case. Only now were they able to match the microscopic evidence from the crime scene to the suspect.
It was like a missing piece of the puzzle, you know, and now that I'm so much older, I miss not having a sister.
Vicki Billingsley was just 13 when her sister Lori was murdered in 1982. Over the past 3 decades, she never gave up hope the killer would be caught. This tattoo served as a constant reminder.
The L stands for my sister.
Billingsley's body was discovered in a drainage ditch here along Southwest Miller Hill Road. Investigators say she was sexually assaulted and then brutally murdered. Now, 30 years later, detectives say they were finally able to match DNA evidence from the crime scene to this man, Kenneth Lee Hicks.
He looks nothing like he did when he was 19. I would never have recognized him. Ever.
Vicki says Hicks was a neighbor, infatuated with her sister. He even moved in with their family a few months before her murder. Detectives and Vicki always suspected Hicks, but there wasn't enough evidence to charge him.
He always carried a knife with him, army boots. He was very rude to me the day that my sister was still missing, and I just had a gut feeling.
That gut feeling? replaced by relief and a sense of closure.
I would like for him to be truthful, not only for us, my family, myself, my sister, but also for himself and his family.
Detectives arrested Hicks at his St. Helens home yesterday. He pleaded not guilty to murder charges this afternoon. Reporting live, Kai Porter, the 10 o'clock news.
A local couple is behind bars tonight accused of repeatedly beating a 2-year-old boy, even breaking his leg and foot. Police arrested Blake Johnson and Rochelle Overton last week after they brought Johnson's son to the hospital. We caught up with Blake Johnson's brother today, and he says Johnson and Overton are not criminals.
I just wanted to say to they just need mental health help. They don't need to be locked up. Not everybody needs jail. Some people need mental health help, not jail time.
According to court documents, the couple confessed to taking turns beating the child while the other person watched.
When a Portland man was kicked out of his hotel room, he left everything behind, including a bicycle chop shop. Police say that he was running out of his room. Police arrested Stephen Sherman today after they say they found 16 stolen bikes in his room at the Biltmore Hotel. KPTV's Kate Cagle is live in our mobile newsroom now with how police are tracing the stolen bikes back to the owners. Kate?
Wayne, the bikes were in pieces by the time that police got to them. Some had even been spray painted. The good news is that every bike frame has its own individual serial number. This one here is right on the bottom in between the pedals. And that's the easiest way for police officers to match stolen bikes back to their original owners. Of course, they can only do that if you file a police report.
It's just a really nice, solid, fast bike.
Jessie Munns thought her bike was safe, bolted to a rack like this one on her car.
They took it all off and, yeah, it took everything.
A $650 Torelli she used to bike 4 miles to work every day.
It was just sad. I mean, you get bonded to a bike like the way that you do.
Mons didn't know the bike's serial number, but she put a description on bikeportland.org's stolen bike registry.
They pointed me to make a case with the police department online. That was really easy.
That was back in October. Somehow, between then and now, the bike made its way from Mons' North Portland home to the Biltmore Hotel. It was one of 16 bikes and boxes of parts found when Stephen Sherman was evicted from his room. Building managers told me Sherman was locking the bikes to this outdoor rack before taking them up. He was evicted 10 days ago, but when he showed up to get his stuff today, police were waiting. Sherman is charged with first and second-degree theft and possession of methamphetamine. As for the bikes, now police are trying to get them back home. Officers found Munns through her police report. That's all that's left of her bike, the frame and 2 wheels. But for Munns, that's better than nothing.
I'm kind of flying high right now. I'm happy that it's back, and it'll be a good project for me to work on in the spring.
And even though Jessie didn't have the serial number for her bike, she knew everything else about it, the make, the model, even the kind of tires. Now, if you're not that savvy with your bike, it may be a good idea to take a picture to have on hand just in case you ever need to post it on the registry. Reporting live, I'm Kate Cagle, the 10 o'clock news.
Police say a meth dealer accidentally dialed the one number he probably never wanted to call, 911. Raleigh Reynolds now faces a number of drug charges. Police say he accidentally called an emergency dispatcher while he was in the middle of a drug deal. They traced the call to a car parked only a block away from the station and found 2 people inside. At first, the pair denied having a working cell phone, but the dispatcher was still on the line and said she could still hear their conversation. Reynolds was jailed and the woman with him was cited.
I opened the door to see what the hell was going on, and he's like, hey, grab your stuff and head downstairs. We got a situation out here.
Yeah, it was a scary situation for some motel guests. They ended up forced out of their rooms early this morning as police tried to track down a wanted fugitive. James Todfest had been on the run since he jumped out the window of another hotel a few weeks ago. Police found him at the Travel Lodge on Northeast 82nd this morning. After evacuating the motel, officers used tear gas to get him out of the room where he was hiding. Police say he was high on meth and hid in the room with his teenage sister, claiming he had a gun. Todfest let his sister go and eventually surrendered peacefully. He does have a long criminal history in both Washington and Oregon, and most recently he's been accused of identity theft. A bomb threat at Battleground High School sent everyone home fearing the worst. School officials say a janitor found a threat written on a stall in the boys' bathroom. They say that threat included a specific school administrator, and they decided to send students and staff home this morning. School officials searched the campus, but they found no evidence of a bomb.
Hey there, hope you're having a great Thursday night. I'm Stephanie Korolovich in for our chief meteorologist, Mark Nelson.
The 10 o'clock news is just getting started.
He's used to heading straight toward the flames, but this time something went wrong.
He just instantly engulfed in flames.
How a fellow firefighter saved this local man from a close call. An artist, described simply as full of joy.
Everything that came out of the shop had a goofy smile on it.
Found murdered in his home. In tonight's cold case, why a car crash long before his death might have led to his murder. A local restaurant that just couldn't learn its lesson. Old, lukewarm chicken. And that wasn't the only violation. The problems that nearly tanked its latest inspection in tonight's Dirty Dining. Plus, admit it, you laughed. And you kept watching. Now, hear from the experts. Could this viral video really just be a fake?
You're watching the 10 o'clock news. First, live, local.
Okay, admit it. You've clicked on at least one of those goat remixes that are going viral, if not more. I know I have, and you have too. We've seen them all over the internet the last few days, and it really got us wondering, is it really possible for a goat to even make that kind of noise?
Well, as you might know, all these music videos are a play off of another YouTube sensation that caught everyone's attention earlier this month. Yeah, from the high-pitched squeals to the low bellows, the goats with the golden voices sound kind of like a cross between a kid throwing a tantrum and maybe Janet Leigh from Psycho. We went to see Scott Cantino, who owns Quail Run Creamery in Gaston. You might call him a goat expert. He's worked with goats for years, and so we decided to ask him if goats really could sound like humans.
I've been listening to goats for years, and I've heard a lot of different tones out of them, so I think it's quite possible that most of those are real. It sounds like a little girl screaming, wanting candy.
Catino says that he's seen many of the viral goat videos, and he says that many of the noises have a purpose. For example, they use sneezes to warn each other of danger. And when goats are close to giving birth, he says they start making a lot of different noises, like they're talking to a kid in the womb.
I love those videos so much. I cannot get enough of them. It makes me want a bunch of goats. Just around.
Yeah, and he has pygmy goats there, right?
Yeah,
I understand we're working on
ones.
another story that we'll bring you a little bit later in the week or month or
Yeah,
something.
so the bottom line is, yes, goats really make those noises, Steph.
I love it. A little girl screaming for candy.
Yeah, exactly.
What a great description. Well, our weather, it looks like it's going to stay on the mild side for tomorrow. Temperatures will be in the 60s, the warmest we've had in a long time. We'll let you know how long it's been, plus how long it's going to last, coming up in your forecast.
Also ahead, the president takes a stand on gay marriage, but will his presidential power be enough to sway the Supreme Court? Legal experts weigh in.
And one family lost everything in a fire, or they thought they did. How one wedding ring brought the whole disaster into focus.
And she is really something, isn't she? Aubrey Cleland is impressing the American Idol judges and now telling the whole world about her home near Portland. See the video a little later. We'll be right back.